Authorizing the city clerk-treasurer to advertise for bids for the project known as 2020 Street Improvements for Bryan North Industrial Park, connecting Beeman Street and Page Street, Bryan, Ohio.
Mr. Wheeler.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We've been working on the North Industrial Park for quite some time now. Remember last year we named a street Johnson Drive out there, and now we're actually finishing the last phase of it. If you've been out there since the street's been complete, where West Beeman Street ends and makes the curve, we're actually going to go south and connect down to Page Street. And so what we've got is plans for the street expansion and for water line addition. And we're actually going to run a water line expansion along Page Street and complete a secondary loop out there for the North Industrial Park. So really excited about this. We've got about $50,000 of ODOT grant funds left over from the first phase, and we received another $200,000 grant from TID to go towards that whole project. So we've got about $250,000 worth of grant funds. My original estimate was around $374,000, but let's just say it's going to be close to $400,000. So we should get $250,000 grant on a $450,000 project. Prior to this bid happening, we've actually received bids through Maumee Valley to tear down the two buildings, which was the former Lingby property through there that the city acquired several years ago. Those will be coming down within the next 30 days, so those will be out of the way as well for this project to go through, and that's where the street's actually going to come down and connect to Page Street. And what this does is gives us a long-term goal. I know quite a few of you were here several years ago when we bought that park, and we had showed the potential rail siding to come up through there. Well, if we get a big enough user up there, rail siding is key, and with that, we are going to have some issues with Page Street. So what this does is it gives us extra options to do in the neighborhood up there if something has to happen with Page Street. Not necessarily stand a closure, but you know, it would be a siding, and potentially the rail siding could block the road for a amount of time. So at least the businesses like Amtrak and AMVets and whatnot down there have a second way out. So either way, with that, I request your permission to advertise for bids for this. We're going to do the same thing at City Council here at 7 o'clock tonight, knowing we will get about $250,000 in grant funds towards the project.
And thank you for that.
Sure, absolutely.
Very much, Brian. Any discussion? Questions?
I guess with that, the water portion was around $102,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Jim?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Annette? Yes. Karen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda will be a presentation by Valutech Solutions on the AMI and RFP results. Dawn, if you would introduce that.
Here to give the presentation is Ed Finnemore, which we have been working with him for a couple years now. He completed the AMI feasibility study for the city, and then also helped us put together the RFP, and he is now in attendance for an overview of what the RFP resulted in. So.
Okay, thank you. See if I can get these slides working here. There we go. You covered half my slides, Dawn, so I'll just move ahead a little. No, actually, it's about time to come in and update everybody on what's been going on with AMI. As Dawn mentioned, we've been at this for a while, and we've made some really good progress, and I think we're kind of at a critical juncture here, so it was very appropriate to come in and update everybody on what's going on. So I just put a few slides together to help give an idea and provide some background as to where we are and what the next steps should be. Just sort of, in way of background, why AMI? We've covered some of these things before, but basically utilities are transitioning to AMI to better manage their billing and customer service workloads, to improve their network reliability, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and provide customers with increased information to help control their energy use. Hundreds of utilities across the country have moved to AMI now as a way of automating the meter reading process and providing additional information. So AMI provides us with automation, also improved efficiency, and additional usage information for many different utility processes and customer service type usages for the data and so forth. As we've discussed in the past, AMI provides many benefits and savings opportunities, and I'll just run down a few of them just to sort of refresh on what we've talked about in the past. It reduces the read to bill turnaround time. It streamlines the collection process through remote disconnect functions and through final read information and so forth. It reduces adjustments, arrears, and water losses. With daily reads, there's ability to catch the losses very quickly so that customers with water leaks, for example, don't have those leaks go on for some time, and it helps to avoid disputes for excessive water use that customers might not feel they were responsible for and so forth. Proactive high usage notifications, so if all of a sudden there are spikes in usage, the ability of AMI to get a daily read, for example, and to provide that information and send you alert if there's higher than normal usage, would permit the utility to go into more of a proactive investigative type process to find out why that is, rather than waiting for the end of the month and then the high customer bill and complaint and so forth that ultimately ensues. Theft detection capabilities reduce and minimize utility energy theft, both in water and electric, so that you can determine if somebody's tampered with the meter and so forth, and then you can sort of launch an investigation very quickly to see what's going on there before the situation gets too bad or gets out of control. There's improved load management because of the ability to read meters even hourly, so that when you're doing circuit analysis studies and so forth, you can look at the load that's loading the circuits and make it, do proactive studies and things to balance loads and change phases and circuits and so forth to enable you to extend the overall system peak without having to build additional circuits and so forth. So it can save you money along those lines as well. An outage notification function, so you're getting outage alarms, so that when you get an outage alarm, somebody can immediately respond, restore power quicker, so there's the benefits of that, plus you're not losing revenue due to lost kilowatt hours from excessive lengths of outages and so forth. So there are many benefits. This is just sort of a sample of some of the benefits you can get out of AMI, and it's sort of a journey, not a destination. As more and more things come up, there are more and more uses for the data. Customer service usages on the customer side of the meter, so that people can do things like programmable thermostats and things like that down the line to help the customer manage their own use. So they sort of become more of a partner with the utility in terms of their ability to reduce their energy use and your ability to work with them to develop programs that help them do that. So there are many benefits to AMI that go beyond just what I mentioned here. To quickly review the current situation, just talking about some of the City of Bryan operations that have occurred over the years 2018 and 2019 during the period we were studying this. The current Datamatic system is being used and has been used for some time with 2 meter readers. Labor costs are increasing as they will with inflation and so forth, so you always have the labor-related costs. You have the vehicle costs that go with it for maintenance and fuel over time. Those will continue to go up. So you're always managing inflationary increases and so forth. And then the Datamatic system is aging and in need of replacement. Datamatic is basically not really in business anymore, and others have taken over some of the manufacturing of some of the products and so forth. So there's going to be ongoing issues with the Datamatic system over time as time goes on. There's a significant cost of field services activities, the cost of billing rereads, for example, sending people out in a vehicle at a high labor cost to go and do rereads when you could just do them by pushing a button with AMI and you can immediately get a reading and so forth. So you save money by doing that. Meter inspections require field visits, but with the data you're getting in from the meters, you're able to much better determine whether you need to send somebody out or not, so you're able to reduce those kinds of field-related costs. Non-payment terminations require meter shutoffs. For example, with the remote disconnect functions from AMI, you don't need to send someone out. It helps with the collection process and so forth because you can terminate service from the office, and then if somebody comes in and then pays their bill, you can turn it right back on. So you don't have to worry about finding somebody on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock to go out and turn the meter back on so that they have power over the weekend. You just hit a button and you can do that. So this is again a sample of what's been going on and what some of the things that AMI will be able to improve being used current operations and so forth. Just to talk for a few moments about water and wastewater losses. Typically a utility can lose as much as 20% of their water from unknown sources, whether it's from fire hydrants or whether it's from fire lines and things, or usage from lost, water line leaks and mains and so forth. AMI can help with that because they can instantaneously read all the meters and check that against the water output that's coming out of the water plant, for example, and you can see on a given day how much your losses are and compare it with your current operations, and it helps you to work down and determine where your losses and so forth are. So most utilities that have implemented AMI for the water side have really noticed a drop in the unaccounted for water that they didn't know where it was going before. And with the systems today, these new low-flow water meters, they record water usage at a very low level. So water that historically went through and was not recorded, or with slow meters and so forth, now you're going to be picking that up and you're going to be getting paid for that water, and it's going to also close down some of the water, unaccounted for water, which people are actually using that is passing through the meter and is not being measured. So it really helps with the new low-flow water meters that would be going in as part of this project. And also the higher recorded water usage also increases your wastewater revenue, because that's really driven off the meter reads that the water usage is recorded in. So as you see an increase in revenue on the water side, the wastewater side also will see revenue increases due to higher accountability for the water that's actually being used. And then reducing your water losses, it reduces the cost of chemicals in water plant production. So as you lose less water, you have to produce less water, and therefore you'll save on chemical costs and production costs of water coming out of the water plant. So there are some real significant benefits on the water side with AMI as well as on the electric side. And as we looked at in our study, depending on the number of replaced water meters, you could see water or wastewater revenue could increase by $35,000 or $40,000 annually, which is not an insignificant amount of money to recoup just from what you're losing today. You'll be gaining that back. About a year ago, January 30th, 2019, we completed the AMI feasibility study. So it's been about a year since we did that. At that time, we estimated that the AMI cost would be about $2.8 million. So it turns out we're almost right on the money when the bids came in. But we broke it down in this way, and we looked at and broke it into the electric portion and the water portion, and we found that electric was about 3/4 of the cost, and the water side was going to be about 1/4 of the cost. Since then, we've made some decisions on different choices of water meters and things as we've gone through the process. So we've pretty much looked at and decided on a much improved, a much better meter that'll have like a 20-year accuracy life and so forth, stainless steel meter, which we're real happy with. It's going to cost more, but the payback will be much greater, and so the benefit will increase over time with that meter. So the total cost is about the same coming in from the bids, and I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. But overall, we were pretty much right on the money with the feasibility study. It's just that the different components have changed a little bit since then. Just to bring you up to date on current status, we've ended the AMI vendor selection period. BMU first issued an RFP for the AMI system on April 30th of 2019. And this was after we had completed the feasibility study. The numbers were shown to be positive, that the project would be feasible if we went ahead with it. And on that basis, you elected to go ahead and proceed with putting out an RFP to solicit a vendor that could provide the AMI system for the water and the electric. After we did that, we prepared the RFP, sent it out, and the bids were received on June 14th, 2019. So we received about 7 or 8 bids, something like that. There were a couple that were not in compliance with the RFP, and we had to reject them. And then the team went through an analysis and a study, which I'll talk about, ultimately ending up in 3 finalists, which we brought in on August the 6th and the 7th to give presentations to us. And so the AMI team listened to the vendor presentations for the finalists, asked questions, discussed their proposals, some similar, some different type things among them, and some capabilities were slightly different. But the RFP included the requirements for the AMI system, the software, the installation, the maintenance services, and so forth, to run a system for a 20-year period. So that when the AMI system, that was one of the parameters in the RFP, that we wanted a system that was capable of operating for up to 20 years. So we included that in the RFP. Included in the RFP was that there'd be a tentative 3-year smart grid deployment plan. We anticipated that because that's generally a reasonable time period. You can save money by doing it quicker if the staff resources are available to support a quicker project. And ultimately, it's up to you and the team to decide the plan as to when you would want to roll that out and how long you would take it. And that's generally consistent with a number of factors, like your staff resources that you can devote to it, budget issues, things of that sort that you want to do. So we've engaged in a discussion with the team about what would be the best period. We have not finalized that period yet, but generally going into these things, we kind of assume a typical 3-year plan for bid proposal purposes and so forth, and that's what we did here. At the end of the process, and after listening to the presentations, we had come down with 3 vendors that we considered to be the best solutions for us for this project that could do the water and the electric and had all the capabilities, not only currently, but future plans and capabilities that you'd be able to use in the future to add more functionality over time as you wanted to. And these systems, we like to have systems that are, like an open system that will not become obsolete, but instead can be added to and enhanced over time, so it'll always be doing what you need to do during that period of time. The 3 finalists we came up with were Honeywell, E.J. Prescott, and Eaton Corporation. And as I mentioned, they all came in and gave us oral presentations where we were able to answer questions and look at their technology really under the microscope and decide, what was best for us as far as this project, which one would be the best. At the end of that process, we had discussions and so forth, and we ended up selecting Eaton Corporation as the vendor of choice for the project. Eaton is a very reputable firm in this business. They've done a lot of AMI projects across the country and also in Ohio. And they have very good capabilities, project management capabilities as well. And their technology is really good, not only on the meter reading side, but also they provide things from a SCADA, from a standpoint of operating equipment on the circuits and substations and so forth, that I think you'll find very useful over time as you move forward and want to begin to implement things beyond meter reading. And I think that's a good point to make, because AMI used to be just about reading the meters and getting meter readings out of it. but it is becoming more and more expanded, and there are more and more usages that are becoming attached to it because you have a communications link to every meter, to every customer that you have. So you're going to want to add as much functionality over time as you can to be able to further enhance the value, add value, if you will, to the AMI system by using it for more and more things. And Eaton is very capable. They go back a long ways in the load control, load management area, so they can do things in the future as you decide if you want to put load management type functions in, or you want to offer time of use rates, or whatever the case may be. They'll be able to support that for you in the time frame that you want to begin looking at these things. So there's no rush to do these things, but over time, what you'll find is there are more and more usages that you want to take a look at for the system that you've got. So the team selected Eaton Corp as the lead vendor for this, subject to negotiating a final contract and approval by the board, to move ahead with this. BMU staff reviewed the results of the vendor presentations. The AMI team considered both cost and technical capabilities. With a system such as this, you're always looking at blending what the cost is versus what the functionality is and what your technical capabilities are. And with most of these systems, what you try to do is strike a balance where you might not have the lowest possible cost among the bidders, but you might have a vendor that's going to be able to do much more for you over time and is going to be able to provide you added value over time that the other ones can't. So when we evaluate these things, we look at a whole range of technical capabilities, what the system can and cannot do, both now and in the future. We weigh it against the cost and ultimately settle on the right solution for you, that works for you, that meets your needs in the best possible way. And that's what I feel like we did here. People were very open-minded to, keeping the costs down on the system, but also at the same time, what value can we get out of the system to do certain things, not only meter reading, as I mentioned, but also on the technical side, whether it's substation automation, SCADA, network monitoring, customer service functions like programmable thermostats and things like that we might want to implement in the future. So the final AMI vendor, Eaton, was selected based on balanced consideration of overall technical proposal and cost. As of right now, contract negotiations, the process is underway. We're looking at their contracts and stuff, but we're waiting to give you an update before we moved ahead with that and before we went too far down that road, because we felt it was an appropriate time to do this and get everybody up to speed on that. We're evaluating the future water meter replacement requirements, like what does the budget permit? How many meters do we want to do and over what period of time? And these things all have to be figured out so that when the contract is done, it'll provide for Eaton to supply the meters on the schedule that we want the meters to be installed in. So whether you do it in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years is a variable that you will decide, or the team will decide, and ultimately the contract will reflect what you all want to have done there. So the next step is preparing the project documents, which include all these things and then have to be reviewed by everybody to make sure we're comfortable with everything that's in there. The Eaton proposal, these are the general categories of costs. I thought I'd put a chart in here just to show you a little bit more about how the costs do break down. The water portion is higher than what we expected originally, but it's because we're getting a much better meter. The team evaluated all kinds of meters for this and looked at the best low flow considerations, accuracy of reading over a long period of time, and selected pretty much a state-of-the-art meter that will be very good for us for the next 20 years and will be very accurate. So the meters are a little bit more expensive than some cheaper meters we could get, but you'll get that value out of the system over the long period of time. It's putting in a quality product that's going to really last over 20 years. So But overall, the project came in just about where we thought it would be when we did the feasibility study. It actually, I think, came in just a little bit under. 60% of it is the water portion, and 40% approximately is the electric portion. Also on the water side, installations are a little bit more expensive to install a water meter than they are an electric meter. So you have that combination. I mean, with the plumbing aspects of putting a water meter in and making sure there's no leaks and things like that, it takes a little more time to do the water installations than it does the electric installations, which is basically just pulling a meter out and sticking another meter in. Those happen in 5-10 minutes, whereas you might spend more time than that with a plumber doing the water installation. So the combination of the water meters themselves and the installation cost is what pushes the water portion of this up a little bit more than what we had originally anticipated. So recommended next steps. The board will need to approve for us to complete negotiations and move ahead with AMI. How I envision this happening would be that we would get the contracts from Eaton, we would review them all, any questions that would have to be resolved, the team would look at and make sure the contract is suitable and covers all the technical issues, and then you would look at them for any legal issues, for liability issues, for things like that. And ultimately, when everybody's comfortable and everyone thinks the contracts are ready to go, then that would be submitted to you for the board for final approval before you could go forward. So you'd have the final word on whether to move ahead based on the final contracts and so forth. We have to in order to do this, we do have to complete some of the deployment strategies and plans. We really need to settle pretty much on the timeline for how we want to install, so that ultimately the final cost will change a little bit depending on whether you do them in 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, because there'll be people on site for longer periods of time, the longer time you take. So it's cheaper to do it quicker, is what I'm trying to say, than trying to do it over a longer period of time. You'll save annually, but overall you'll save, it end up being more because you have project management people, feet on the ground for a lot longer period of time. That's what it basically amounts to. So we'll need to finalize the schedule, finalize the contract documents, identify business system interfaces, what we're going to tie into the billing system and so forth, and get the billing people involved in that to make sure they understand what data files would be coming over and how they would continue to bill their customers. Because while you're deploying this, you really have two systems in place. You have your current system, and some customers that haven't been changed over yet are being billed on the old system, and then you have the new system in place where the meters have all been changed over and they're on the AMI, so there'll be a group of those customers. And over time, as this group gets smaller, this group gets bigger, until finally this one goes to zero and everybody's on the new system. So it takes a little coordination, and that's something we work with the billing people to get that done. And once you get that going, it's fairly routine. It's the same thing over and over again. It's a repeat process, so it gets to be, business.
Ed, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you anticipate any problems as far as the transition, the software interface with Laura's office? I mean, is this going to be a headache for her, or maybe she can speak up?
It could be a little
because we had that in
short term. But once you get it down and you have the interfaces built, it's just a matter of each month you have to do a balancing thing. If you have whatever it is, say you have 5,000 customers, you've got to send out 5,000 bills. So this month you got 3,000 from this and 2,000 over here, and then next month it's 2,800 here and 3,200 here. Then a month after it's 20, so you have to do a balance to make sure everybody gets a bill and there's nothing wrong. So that takes place for a while, and that's actually an argument why a lot of utilities want to go faster, not longer. Like if you take 3 years and you're stretching this thing out, then you're worried about that for a longer period of time. But if you take a year to do it, you get everybody over there quick, and the headache goes away a lot faster. But just kind of goes with the territory, but Eaton is really good at working with the billing people and making sure that there are no billing issues, the bills go out. And also, the sooner you switch over, sooner the revenue picks up in areas like water and stuff, because now you're getting the new meters installed and so forth a little bit quicker, so.
I can see you getting a headache already.
I think you're right.
It's not so
Okay.
bad.
I'm writing that down, not so bad.
Right, right. Everyone's goes through this, so, but you'll be glad when it's over, because everything's automated, there's automated checks and balances, the rebills, the estimates, the corrected bills, they all go way, way down. I mean, you basically don't get estimated bills anymore. There's no reason to ever get an estimated bill, because it's all automated. So you're not sending people out to get a reading or, do stuff like that. So it does make your life easier on the other side of it, if you're in the billing department.
And Eaton has worked with our software provider, SSI, before, and they also serve several communities around us with the same software.
Right, Bill?
They were pretty confident that they could send her a flat file and help alleviate some of that, if I recall correctly from the presentation that they gave.
Those were
Right, in
questions,
fact,
too.
St. Clairsville, Ohio, uses SSI and is Eaton, and, so they've already been through all this, so it's not like it's something brand new to them. They know the systems, they did the water and the electric for St. Clairsville, and those guys love it down there. It went through very easily, and it's worked, very well for them. They're real pleased.
Since we have,
So at least you'd have somebody you could call down there and.
We've already spoken to St. Clairsville.
In fact, they were calling you when they were putting their upgraded SSI in, because you went to eGov before them,
I think that would
and
probably make
so
sense.
they were calling you, as I recall.
They were.
But we haven't,
Identify who's in that billing cycle.
right, I think that would make a lot of sense.
So that's pretty much it. The last step is proceed with AMI deployment in 2020. Questions, discussion, anything that you have in the way of questions, feel free to ask.
20-year life seems really very good.
Yeah, it's, the thing about it with an open system, it's, when a lot of it is software can be upgraded. So as time goes on and more functions come out and more things, then the software gets upgraded so that you always have a current system and you're always doing the things that you, the new things that are coming out, so to speak, and stuff. Because you're going to want to do more things. Everybody does. Once you start seeing all the information you're getting, you're starting seeing, boy, how can, what can we do with the bill? We can do all kind of stuff. Part of it is putting the website up that gives them daily reads, so a customer can pull their usage up and see every day.
Yeah, we did that too. We had all of that
It's really
stuff.
helpful, and then on the billing side, when somebody calls in with the, billing complaint, they say, well, we were gone for 2 weeks. Well, you pull it up and you say, well, your usage doesn't show that. You're only gone a week because it only dropped down and then went back up. So the amount of information you get is really good, and it's really going to be helpful to operations and so forth. You might want to think about over time what you want to do as far as, maybe some advanced rates like time of use, or implementing programmable thermostats so that you can implement rates and then you can automatically adjust the thermostat. Customers can go in online and do stuff. It's just amazing at what can be done these days, and this kind of a system gives you the foundation that lets you be able to do that.
Radio control switches, basically.
I'm sorry?
Radio control switches.
Yeah.
Yep, you can, and the Eaton system is very flexible. You can do things on the utility management side that are really nice. Capacitor bank controls, all kinds of things that let you manage your circuits and your substations and circuits and so forth in a way that can save you money over time, reduce losses. One of the big things, especially on systems that are, capacity loaded, you can get electric losses in the 4 to 6% range. And if you can cut the losses down to 2 or 3%, that's a lot of kilowatt hours that you might be paying for off system that you're not really using, that now you're going to be able to save money on that sort of thing. So,
other questions? I guess would you like some direction from the board as far as to proceed? I know there's work on the contract.
Right, I think what it would be appropriate at this point is to finalize those contracts, get them to the point where they could then be presented to you, and we could say, you know, the team, everybody's looked at this, everybody's comfortable with it, we've got the changes we need done and everything, and then then you'd be in a position to say, okay, let's, final approve it or not at that point. But if we can get the okay to move ahead and get the contract part of it done, then it would be in a position for you on a future board meeting to be able to look at it.
Okay. Need a motion for that?
To continue with contract negotiations?
Yeah, to give
Sure.
value.
But, yeah, and then the final project.
The final part will come back to us.
before you.
Correct. So I guess I'll entertain a motion to give Valutech the authority to go ahead and start working on the contract.
I'll make a motion, we go forward with the contracts.
I'll second it.
Jim?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
Yep, thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is a resolution. Would you please number and read, Laura?
Resolution number 4, 2020. A resolution authorizing Carrie Schlade as delegate and Thomas Sprow as alternate to represent the City of Bryan as a member of the Board of Directors of the Ohio Municipal Electric Association in 2020.
And this is just an annual formality. Usually the mayor is our delegate to the OMEA, and one of the board members is always an alternate, which it's been Tom Sprow.
And I certainly appreciate Tom filling in for me when I've been unable to make it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'd like to make a resolution that we do pass, authorize Carrie as the delegate and Tom as the alternate.
I'll second.
Karen?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is another resolution. Can you please number and read, Laura?
Resolution number 5, 2020, authorizing the Director of Utilities to execute an agreement with SSOE Group for the 35.5 kV upgrades project.
As we all recall, part of the industrial park and getting the Daggett substation retired is to continue on with retiring the 34.5 kilovolt lines. The first step in doing that is to start the engineering portion. Since tonight we'll be talking about the construction bid and things later. But on the 34.5, the next step would be to get the engineering done, and the first part is the outside customer, which is Titan Tire, because the only other customer is BMU at the power plant. So we originally had GPD doing the industrial, so we talked to them about giving us a proposal for removing or engineering the 34.5 line, and it came in at $177,000, or maybe some of you are aware of that or not, I don't know. That seemed kind of steep for some of us, so we contacted SSOE out of Toledo and had them come down, and they proposed at $96,600 to do the engineering. They had proposed to do it from a more kind of a two-step thing, which is buying the transformers from a couple 69 kilovolts to 4160, and then also buying a phase 2 that would be the structural portion of it with the metering base and all that stuff that would attach to it. The pole line would still be built by BMU as a continuation from Industrial Park coming around, and then they would continue to bring that on over through the power plant and then over to Baker. but that would not be in this phase yet. And then the third phase would be to secure a construction contract for the foundation work and actually installing the transformers and all that kind of stuff. One of the caveats of all this is we would be responsible for doing some ground penetration radar and some also evaluation. They don't have the capabilities to do that in SSOE. They can do a 3 model and all that kind of stuff, so it's kind of taken care of from that standpoint. But when you have an old facility as old as Titan Tire, back to Continental and General Tire and all that, you don't know what's underneath. There could be old drain lines coming out of the building, and now you're setting a bigger, heavier transformer on it. We kind of want to know what's in the ground. So that's kind of on our side, which they said $20,000. I talked with Bryan and Nate, and they know a couple people that we can get some other quotes for, because once again, we think that may be a little inflated. So what we are asking for is that we be able to, that you would agree with contracting SSOE group from Toledo, Ohio to do the engineering portion of the 34.5 upgrade that would include the Titan Tire transformers and metering base and that area right there. The budget that we had set for in 2020 was $1.1 million for the project, so this is within 10% of the whole project. Questions?
Questions? Entertain a motion to accept resolution number 5.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
I second it.
Jim?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is another resolution. Can you please number and read, Laura?
Resolution number 6, 2020, authorizing the Director of Utilities to execute an agreement with FET Construction Services LLC for construction of the Industrial Drive Substation Project.
I was wondering where you went.
Well, I didn't know if I wanted to share it with Nate or not, so I'll get it there. We received the bids last Thursday at noon. I believe you had the tabulation sheet in front of you. We allowed GPD to look through all the bids, and FET was still the lowest, and they made some contacts with FET to make sure that they were sure that they had included everything. They assured us in the email, or from Jeff Gump from GPD, that they had included anything, and they were very confident that they could deliver in the time frame. They wanted a few more days than they had originally said, but it was still within the time frame that we had required in the contract when we sent out the bid sheets. The second thing is we found out that they had been used over in Bowling Green for a tow line, and they had been used at Mount Pillier to do their substation. One of the things that came back from Bowling Green and from Mount Pillier was, well, they did a great job and everything else, but they did have to ask them to do a couple things that they thought they should have done on their own. In my 20 years of project management, I've never in my life not had to help a contractor get through something. So I don't see that as a barrier. GPD didn't see that as a barrier, and we're requesting that we be able to award the construction bid to FET for $1.131,826.
And in the 2020 budget, we actually had
1.7.
1.7 million. I think the estimate was around 1.6, but we added additional contingencies, so this is well under what we had initially.
It's a little more realistic than the last meeting.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the contract with FET Construction to complete the Industrial Drive Substation Project.
Yeah.
I wanted to get it all out there.
Now, second.
Karen?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Thank you.
Glad to see we're moving forward. Pretty anxious to get that going. Next on the agenda will be a discussion regarding the BMU-owned rental homes. Dawn?
In the interest of time, I thought I'd just sit here. I was going to get up and give a presentation, but we all have a meeting that we need to get to next, so hopefully I'll try and cover everything that I had in the slides that are before you. As you all are aware, but in case anybody out there that's watching does not know, BMU owns 4 rental homes, 3 of which are currently vacant and 1 is inhabited. The addresses are 223 South Emmett Street, 622 East Butler, and 306 and 308 East South Street. In 2017, there was significant conversation held about what to do with the rental homes as they become vacant. I think the first vacant one was on East Butler, and that would have been in December of 2016. So that current home has sat empty since 2016. The general consensus was to keep the rental properties in as-is condition until a renter moved out, and when the renter moved out, the property would not be rented again, and a demolition contract on the property will be sought. So, which leads us to today. We have a potential funding source that would assist us in demoing 3 out of the 4 properties. All of them would be submitted to the funding source separately, so there is a chance that maybe 1 would get funded, or 2 would get funded and 1 not, but we're going to try for all 3. And a condition of the potential funding sources, they would like, if this is the direction in which the BPA would like to move, they would like the board to approve us applying for the funding source by motion. So with that, the time frame would probably be the 3rd to 4th quarter of 2020. Between now and then, we would also like to make the request that the rental properties, if the board would choose to demo them, be made available to the police and fire departments for training prior to the demolition. And at this point, the properties would be restored to green space. I have spoken to department heads and employees and other board members discussing what the importance is for us to retain these parcels. They're in close proximity to some valuable assets that we have here that we would like to retain. Specifically, the East Butler property would allow us, if we needed to expand our water treatment plant in its current place, or if our water treatment process were to change, we would have the available land to do that. 223 South Emmett Street, that home sits adjacent to the municipal power plant, and it's also very close to our main water transmission line that comes out of the water treatment plant. And the East-South Street properties are located close to the substation, which it's a benefit for us to maintain a buffer around those structures. So, essentially, that's what I have.
So these properties were purchased with the intent that we might need the space sometime?
Correct.
And they weren't purchased because the houses were there and we were going to rent them to people as an income, revenue?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so either.
I was purchasing agent at the time for these properties, and no, we did not buy them as income-producing properties. We bought them for the reason that you said. We needed the space to protect our assets. In case of expansion, we went through a big build on South Street, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
And if that house wouldn't have been there, we could have utilized some of that land there as well for that electrical build, so I will confirm that.
I was one of a group of people that went through them, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
3.5 years
Did
ago.
a walkthrough. At the time, they were all rented, basically to see what needed to be done to bring them up to code, electrically and structurally. And we did invest some money in them, basically, electrical upgrades and things like that, I think. Like I say, a handrail. And at the time, we kind of decided, as I recall, that we were going to take them to that stage and then just stop and then deal with them as they, I don't know, aged. But I know having requests for, one of them, I remember they wanted windows, replacement windows, seal a damp basement, just things like that. And it got to the point to where it just wasn't practical.
Became a headache.
It did, and I think we're at a stage now where we need to deal with them. I mean, with one of them still being rented, I think we need to take that into consideration to work with the person that's living there now, but.
That's probably one of the best ones
It probably
out of the bunch. It needs the least amount of work to put.
Yeah. This would be for 3 of the properties, the property that's currently inhabited. If the board wanted to take the same direction, I believe it would be appropriate to discuss that further and give a good notice.
Reasonable amount of time, yeah.
Sure.
Can I ask Rhonda a question? You did a study one time about the income and payoff on the homes, and it really did show that they had value on paper. Do you think that type of situation still is in place, or could we do another?
Since you haven't had them rented, I would guess that those figures are
Probably
no
offset
longer
it.
viable.
Yeah.
That was several years ago. And I think my bigger concern was to show that we have made those funds whole and what we had recouped from those rentals. And I think at that time we were at that point. I can't say now, I don't have the figures as to the rental income and what's been rented, so.
You'd say no reason why we would really need to keep them, or it would not hurt anything to get rid of them either?
From what has been provided to me with the walkthroughs and the condition, I think at least 3 of them are probably at a point where you are not going to get any benefit out of it versus the cost put into it. And I think there's an inclination that we really aren't in the rental business anyway, and it's probably just wise that we go to green space. I think the board's acted prudently with this, and it's time to.
I agree, it's time to do
Thank you. Appreciate
what we
your
intended
comment.
to do.
Have they done any looking into whether the police or the fire department would want to use them for?
We have discussed it during the mayor's department head meeting. Our management team, I get the 2 names mixed up, but I think both of them are interested if the time frame can line up with.
Yeah, they certainly don't want to hold you guys up in anything that you would be doing, but I know police, but especially fire, would love to use the facility to train, and would be very grateful for that opportunity.
So I guess the question is if it were to be kind of like used as, let's say the fire department uses it as training, would the demolition be cheaper then?
I don't think they're gonna do anything like that.
Yeah, they can't burn it because it's in a residential area, so it's more, they would probably bring like a fog machine in and, you know, just
Yeah.
have a low visibility type training.
So it'd be more for rescue then? I
Yes, yeah. We don't burn things in residential areas, it tends to, I mean, Mr. Salsbury knows,
Yes,
it
I
melts
do.
the siding beside the house, beside you. So we try to avoid that, but
Yeah.
it's more, if that would be the case, then prior to the demolition, they would schedule a training day, but it certainly wouldn't be anything that would hold up your demolition timeline.
And if something were to, you know, if they
If it
knock
doesn't
the
work,
door
we're
in
gonna, yeah.
or whatever, it's not gonna be a big deal.
It's going to be a knock-down.
Right, right.
Yeah. And if I may, Mr. Whelan, give your horn a toot. You were very instrumental in helping us get some funding. And I just want you to know this board utility appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Well, you know, too, sometimes we've had people that, whether they be board members or whatever, that somehow saw value in them as a rental property, and I think we take a step forward and then we just kind of stop. We wouldn't proceed with anything. I think it's time that we move on this.
Any other questions?
I would entertain a motion, if we were to be funded,
Okay.
we would bring a resolution back to you for approval.
Okay.
But if, can I have permit, motion to apply for the funding and that the board would support the demolition of the 3 properties.
Would like to make a motion then that we proceed in preparing the cost that it needs to take to remove 3 properties.
Second.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Annette?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Next on the agenda was, if you remember the last board meeting, we tabled the committee appointments because there was a change of gavel. So we have the committees for the 2020 committees. They will be Karen Ford on finance and Annette Schreiner. Water will be Tom Sprow and Karen Ford. Communication, be Jim Salsbury and myself. Electric, be Jim Salsbury and myself. Technology will be Annette Schreiner and Tom Sprow. HR will be myself and Jim Salsbury. BIPAC, which is the Bryan Industrial Park Advisory Committee, will be myself and Tom Sprow. We've agreed to meet quarterly. And the dates, we have the dates already set. It will be on Friday, so it's in between our board meetings, so it's the Friday prior to our board meeting. Be March 13th, June 12th, September 11th, and December 11th. And the times, of course, will be determined. We haven't quite set the times yet for the committees. Motion to accept this, or?
I think just because I don't want any confusion with council, on the BIPAC,
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a note that Dick Long is listed there as the interim director. It's not a 2 BPA member seat, because I only have 1 council member too.
Oh.
I didn't want council to think. So Tom Sprow, you're also on that, as you were last year. Thank you.
Didn't think of that. So is that suffice for that?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
No conflict of timing or issues?
Don't know
We'll
yet.
look around.
Time has not been set. I'm going to see if I can take time off work, see what works out.
Yeah,
on those dates.
okay.
Okay,
If not, I'm always available to fill in, so.
thank you.
Could I have a motion for that?
Oh, okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the 2020 committees.
I move that we accept the committees as stated.
Second.
Tom?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Annette? Yes. Karen?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda will be to pay the bills. I'll entertain a motion. Pay the bill.
Looks good. I'll make a motion, we pay the bills.
I'll second.
Karen?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Annette? Yes. Tom?
Next on the agenda is comments from BPA and staff. Mrs. Ford.
Good to set up the new year, and I think we're jumped in with all our thought processes and gear in line for making some good advancements, so that's all I have to say.
It's good to see the AMI project move along. We've been talking about it for a long time. It's going to be a savings, money-wise, time-wise. It's something that we need to do and get her done, so glad to see that we're moving forward.
I would like to thank Nathan for such detail on the map drawings. It helps me understand what's going on also. And basically, yes, the AMI detail obviously puts it all together where the savings can be made and the value of the new system. And also the same thing with the transformer, or the PVA transformer upgrade. So, yeah.
Jim?
I'm, like Tom, I'm happy to see we're moving forward with projects, the substation and the AMI. I think that's something we really need to do. Also, it was in the board packet, I think, some information where, on the Good Neighbors Fund, some more people, I think the public deserves to be commended for their generosity to that. It's a good feeling to see people take care of each other like that.
I ditto everything you said. That took all the words out of my mouth. Dawn?
I would just like to say, I think I can speak on behalf of the BMU team. Thank you to the board for supporting these projects. We're really excited to move them forward as well. We're probably the most exciting thing at the moment is a construction company to handle the Industrial Drive Substation. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Mayor?
Well, I have an update that council will get later too, but I don't know if any of you watch TV, but HGTV has a Come Remake My City contest. And so some of the utility members said, hey, why not Bryan? So Dawn and I and Eric and Chris Bryce have also volunteered resident business owner Russ Davies, who is a whiz on camera. And we are working on some footage collaboratively to do that submission. There's a possibility that we will make a Facebook event for a call to action to try to get some residents, maybe on the courthouse square, to do a final shot. We're not certain if that's the case. I'm sure Dawn will be willing to email you guys that. But the submission deadline is quick, so whatever turnaround time has to be also. But it's been really kind of a fun thing. Eric and Russ and I went through some downtown businesses this morning together to take some footage. Chris Bryce was really excited to edit, and reminded me a little bit about how the fun parts of being the mayor and being in the city of Bryan. So I was really appreciative that they had this idea and brought me into it. So just wanted to let you guys know that we will be submitting for that. I'm sure it's 1,000,000 to 1 odds, but worth a try.
Never know.
You can't win if you don't submit it.
That's right.
Rhonda?
No, sir.
Laura?
No, sir.
Department heads, Jim, Nate, Mrs. Long.
She's sitting behind Nate, so you got to call her.
Bryan laughed. HR, Jackie, Council, Mr. Osborne.
I just want to officially invite, most of you come anyway, to the city council meeting, all of BPA. I'm going to be presenting a alternative proposal that council has not seen, that you have not seen. It will be submitted, I will present it, and then if there's any initial questions or discussion, we can have that, but the intent is to kind of take it, council can take it, and we're probably not going to discuss it until the February 3rd meeting, give them time to chew it over. Same with you, with the intent of, after that 2 or 3 week period, that BPA and City Council have a joint meeting to discuss that, and I know, Mr. Long, you had another issue too, so we could have like 2 things that we could discuss at that joint meeting. But I didn't know how much that got, I just wanted to make sure everyone was understanding and that what's happening here. There is no vote. There is just going to be potential discussion, probably not even that much, but at least you'll hear another alternative, and then you can discuss it and see what you think about it.
Okay. Thank you, John. Mr. Osborne?
Okay.
Mr. Scott?
I'm good.
You're good? Pat, do you have anything? Okay. I skipped you, I'm sorry. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Jim?
Yes.
Annette? Yes. Dick?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Who would say no?